Hi viewers and welcome to CEC-UGC. I welcome you all. It is good to see you all once again to the next part of the lecture on K Narayan's Swami and Friends. Thank you all for tuning in with me again. I am Piyush Chaudhary, currently working as an assistant professor at Hansraj College, University of Delhi. I welcome you all. In the previous two lectures, I discussed the summary of K Narayan, Swami and Friends. We also had detailed discussions on the city of Malgudi as Narayan had constructed it. We also discussed briefly about the Doordarshan adaptation of the novel. In this new part, today, we will go on to a more detailed discussion on the various themes of Swami and Friends. Let me just show you my lecture plan for the day before I proceed, and I will be touching on these topics in these lectures. Here is my lecture plan, as you can see. The very first topic will be the character analysis. So, all the various characters of the novel, I will be discussing them, the major ones mostly. Then we will talk about a very important theme, and that is the critique of the education system in the novel Swami and Friends. Then we will also be talking about the theme of childhood innocence, friendship and childhood innocence basically, and how all the various characters show this particular theme, how this theme gets exemplified in the novel. And the last topic will be the trope, or you can say the theme of humor in Swami and Friends and the importance of humor. That is what we are going to do today. So, let us now go to the first of all the various character analysis of the novel. So, through the character analysis, I will be touching on various other themes. So, interspersed within my broader lecture will be other themes as well, apart from the ones that I just showed you on the screen. So, I will start with Swami first, and as we know, Swami is the eponymous protagonist and the protagonist of the novel. This is Swami, the character, and I have taken the pictures from the Doordarshan adaptation. Now, Swami is the main character, the protagonist of the novel, and the entire novel revolves around his antics and the events in Swami's life. Swami had, as we know, he had peculiar traits of an innocent school-going young kid. If any reader reads the novel, they will surely find traits of their own character, of their own childhood in Swami's character. But also he had some peculiar features. I mean, he does something out of passion, out of anger, and then later he feels sorry for the decisions that he has taken. For instance, if you remember the opening pages of the novel, after he gets a beating from Ebenezer, he informs his father about it, who writes a letter of complaint against the teacher and sends it to the headmaster along with Swami. Swami realizes that he should have handled issues at school, issues which have happened at the school, at the level of the school itself. Similarly, later on he takes a decision in anger or passion, but then he regrets it heavily. For instance, his rash decision of leaving the school in anger, and then another rash decision of leaving the home for forest. K Narayan is basically trying to show how a child does something out of passion, but then he regrets it later on. Right? It happens in the freedom movement protests as well, if you remember. Swami is a school-going kid boy, he's a school-going boy, but then he does something and then later on regrets. He gets involved into the political activities, but later on he regrets, right? So, Swami's life is also, very closely associated with his friends, and his friends also play a very important role in his life. When Swami was invited by his father to accompany him to the club, he felt very happy. Swaminathan was elated and he wished that some of his friends could see him. So, you must have noticed that throughout the novel, whenever Swaminathan is happy, he thinks about his friends, alright. At happy times, he thinks of his friends. He wished that some of his friends could see him. That's all there is to a child's life, isn't it? Now, have a look at these lines, which I will be showing you now on this slide to understand the character of Swami. The car whizzed along. Swaminathan was elated and wished that some of his friends could see him then. The car slid into a gate and came to a stop amidst half a dozen other cars. He watched his father playing tennis and came to the conclusion that he was the best player in all the three courts that were laid side by side. Swaminathan found that whenever his father hit the ball, his opponents were unable to receive it, and so it let it go and strike the screen. He also found that the picker's life was one of grave risks. Swaminathan fell into a pleasant state of mind. The very fact that he was allowed to be present there and watch the people gave him a sense of importance. He could have something to say to his friends tomorrow. And I have taken it from chapter number 11. So, this shows that for Swami, his friends play a very important role in his life. right? So he's very happy, he wants to tell his friends what has happened in his day. So that's all that there is to a child's life, right? So whenever he is happy, he thinks about his friends. Also, the novel shows Swami's character development. Later on, when he encounters the coachman's son at the club, he does not tell it to his father. This is because he did not want to he did not want his parents to be involved into another fiasco of his life. So the novel also shows his growth as a character, right? Earlier on he informs his father, but then he regrets, and later on he also grows as a character. He learns from his mistakes and he tries to keep that difficult situation a secret. Okay, so this is one of the instances where he wants to tell his father, but then he stops himself from doing so, right? So we see the character development of Swami, where instead of acting impulsively, now he is thinking about the consequences that his action might cause. So yes, his character is also developing, right? If the readers notice closely, Swami was more reckless, if you remember, in the beginning of the novel. After halfway going through the novel, the readers would realize that he is mending his ways, he is changing his ways, and at one point of time he even thinks sorry for the way he treated his grandmother. So Swami keeps on going back to reflect on his own actions, and his character also changes in the entire novel, right? You will realize that his character is slowly changing. So therefore the novel is also a rite de passage, right? That is, it shows the growth of Swami's character. So this is, Swami from innocence to experience as he goes forward. Next is the character of Rajam, and this is Rajam, as you can see. The English speaking son of a powerful police superintendent. Rajam is a young boy, but he is not an egoistic boy. However, there is a certain sense of self-worth and pride with which he carries himself. And Rajam is a product of the colonial education system. He is a product of the Macaulayan British upbringing. He is Indian by blood, he is Indian by looks, but very modern and British by his culture, his etiquettes, his manners and his dressing sense. The very first day that he comes, he impresses the whole class. He is a newcomer, but he dresses very well. He is an outsider too in that sense, an outsider to Malgudi, because he comes there as his father was transferred. If you remember in the previous lectures, we also discussed how in the city of Malgudi, the equilibrium gets restored once Rajam goes back, because Rajam is more or less an outsider, right? Later on, when his father is transferred again, he leaves Malgudi at the end of the novel. Also, very importantly, Rajam's personality is an extension of his family's high position in the society. If you remember, when his friends come to visit him, he knew that his friends were waiting for him, but he liked to keep them waiting for a few more minutes deliberately. Why? Because he has seen his father, the superintendent of police, doing the very same thing. So the family becomes a very important source of Rajam's personality. Family plays a very important role in his life because he has learnt a lot of things from his father. His etiquettes, his upbringing, everything, right? So Rajam does not want to behave rudely. He is not an egoistic boy, but at the same time he has a certain sense of self-pride, right? He comes late to meet his friends because he has seen his father doing so. And this shows that children are obviously affected by the adults. A child's world is obviously affected by the adult world. Another instance where he shows his authority is in the funny bullock cart episode, where he stops a random cartman and asks for his permit. As a child of the superintendent of police, he has seen his father doing the same and act out similarly countless times. And what he is doing is he is emulating his father's behavior, right? So he is emulating his father's behavior because his father was a police superintendent. He is showing power, right? So these are the reasons why he stops the bullock carts, because he has the authority to do so. I mean, he does not have the authority, of course, but he shows that he has the authority, all right? It represents his status as the son of an SP. It shows that Rajam speaks in an authoritative manner, and look at this funny scene to understand the character of Rajam. As you can see, a jingling was now heard. A close mat-covered cart drawn by a white bullock was coming down the road. They rose, advanced, stood in a row and shouted, "Pull up the animal, will you?" So the children are saying, "Pull up the animal." The cart driver was a little village boy. "Stop the cart, you fool," cried Rajam. The cart driver said, "Boys, why do you want to stop me?" And look at what Rajam says. He says, "Whom do you address as boys? Don't you know who we are? We are the government police out to catch humbugs like you," added Swaminathan. "I shall shoot you if you say a word," said Rajam to the young driver. Give him a pass and be done with him, Rajan conceded graciously. And then what Swaminathan does is he takes out a pencil and he carried on his orders. He held the paper and the pencil ready and asks them their name. He replies that his name is Karuppan. He asks their age and he says, I don't know, sir. You don't know? Swami, write 100. Look at the funny scenes, right? What is your bullock's name? I don't know, sir. Swami, write Karuppan again. Where are you going? Sethur. Swaminathan wrote it down. How long will you stay there? It is my place, sir. Swaminathan entered every word in his notebook. Then all the three signed the page, tore it off, gave it to the cart driver and permitted him to start. So, can you notice, the way in which Rajam acts? It's a funny scene, and Rajam acts as the head policeman patrolling the area, and they are all doing it for fun out of playful innocence only. But the important thing is that there is a certain authority in the character of Rajam. That's why he is able to do so. Without Rajam, the other boys would never have been able to pull off this prank on the young innocent cart boy, right? And then he lets the boy go at the end. So, this shows that there is a certain authority in his character which is a result of his family's position in the society. Later on, in several chapters later, even while playing cricket, Rajam simply appoints himself as the captain. It's a very important point. Why? Because you guys already know that Rajam has a superior air around him, isn't it? There is a superior air around Rajam. So, he thinks highly of himself and hence he becomes the natural leader of the pack because of his social position, because he is the SP's son. Okay. So, to put his background, his background is very powerful. His father is very powerful, right? So, they are rich people, they are aristocrats. So, it shows that Rajam's position in society is very high, and that is why nobody has decided him, and he decides himself to be the captain and everybody simply accepts it and nobody revolts, because they know that Rajam is in a great position. He is in a position and he is better than them and therefore a natural leader of the pack, right. So, then you remember the earlier episode. So, it also shows that Rajam is very assertive. It shows that he is not going to be beaten down easily, right. His family and his surroundings have made him so. He becomes the automatic leader of the gang, right, and nobody revolts. Everyone finds him suitable, right. So, in later on we find this is the these are the major characteristics of Rajam, right. So, later at the end of the novel, despite being upset on Swami, Rajam still accepts his gift or his parting present, as the name of the last chapter is. The readers will notice that despite the social and the economic difference between Swaminathan and Rajam, Rajam is a good friend with everyone and he does not look down upon everyone. His social status, the economic status, the financial status never divides or stops them from being friends. So, Rajam was very authoritative and he takes the major decisions, but at the same time he is not egoistic at all, right. So, he was authoritative, but he was never bossy, you can call it this way. He was assertive, he was never bossy, he never considered others lower to him. So, basically it is a very happy world of children that K Narayan is trying to show us. So, that is all about the character of Rajam. Let us now go to the next character, and that is Swaminathan's father, and you can see this picture is Girish Karnad, the legendary playwright. A lawyer by profession, he is stern and concerned about Swami's education all the time, and he represents parental authority in Swami's life. His father is always around him, always after his life, to force him to study, and he constantly keeps an eye on Swami and what he is doing. The next character is Mr. Ebenezer, the teacher. Now, Swami's scripture teacher at Albert Mission School, he is a strict and a fanatical Christian who often belittles Hinduism, creating tension in Swami's school's life. We will talk more about Ebenezer later on when we read the critique of education system in Swami and Friends. Then the next character is, as you can see, it is Somu. Now, he is the class monitor, he is confident and well liked among his peers. Swaminathan refers to him as the uncle of the class. His character represents authority among the students, though he eventually fades from the group after failing an exam. The next that you can see on the screen is, his name is Shankar. He is also one of the characters in the novel. He is known as the most brilliant boy of the class. He is the topper, and Swami often seeks his guidance. The next friend is, you can see his name is Samuel. They also call him the P, Mutter, They call him Matar, they call him a pea because of his small size, because of his short stature, right. So, he was just another ordinary boy of the class and a very good friend of Swami. Next is a very important character, Mani. He is a very good friend of Swami. So, he is described as the mighty good for nothing. Mani is a bold and a strong figure who often resorts to fighting. He is very quick to fight. Despite his poor academic performance, he is very loyal to his friends and plays a significant part in their adventures. Next is Swaminathan's grandmother. On the background you can see Swami's grandmother, and in the front you have Swami. She is a loving figure in Swami's life. She provides emotional support to Swami, shares stories from her past. Swami's grandmother is basically a symbolic figure who symbolizes the past. Okay, she is a widow, she is lonely, she is religious and occupies a somewhat unique position in the context of traditional Indian joint family, right. She is viewed by Swami as ancient, right, and sometimes even embarrassing, yet he seems to be very close to her and spends a lot of time with her, narrating the incredible incidents that keep on happening in his life. She is his confidant, and he is the only ray of sunshine and his source of excitement in her otherwise day-to-day mundane life that she is living, right. Swami's grandmother is also a symbol of the second childhood, and although poles apart based on their age, there is one trait with Swami that she shares, and that is innocence. The next character is Swami's mother. Now, she is responsible for household duties. Narayan's novels and stories are filled with Indianness, Indian values, Indian characters, Indian womanhood and other Indian elements. So, his characters are always realistic and inspired by real life people. Swami's grandma and his mother are two such characters that are instilled with this element of Indianness, and the typical Indian household women. So, Narayan is representing that. Okay, she is deep rooted, abiding and complacent, a very obedient, cooperative, traditionalist, and you can say a passive woman character. And K Narayan's novel mostly shows, and there are just majorly two women characters in this novel. The one is Swami's grandmother and the other is Swami's mother, right. So, Swami's mother appears rarely in the novel, and throughout the novel she is mostly preoccupied with her newborn baby or the household stuff, or sometimes tending to Swami. She was never seen taking part in any important house decisions like financial matters, or even Swami's education like his father used to do. She is a mild woman and rarely takes part in any activities outside of the four walls of her home. So, she is basically a marginal character, right. Women in this particular novel, as I have mentioned, there are just two women characters. They are not important characters. K Narayan has not given a very a very nuanced character analysis or a very nuanced character to these women, right. So, it is a general view that in the conception and portrayal of women characters, Narayan shows a typical Indianness. These women are the bodyguards of customs and religion, condemned to everlasting slavery of domestic tasks, breeding of children, and they are basically shadows of their husbands, you can call it that way, right. So, many critics have branded K Narayan's women as insignificant beings owing to their little or perhaps no presence in the stories, right. So, they are mostly either a dutiful wife or a loving mother or a supportive grandmother, and mostly they are not named but known by their relationships. We have no names given to Swami's grandmother or Swami's mother itself, right. So, these characters enrich the narrative by illustrating various aspects of childhood, friendship and societal expectations within the context of British India and Malgudi. So, each minor character, all these characters, they all play a role in shaping Swami's journey and understanding the world around him. But overall, the women characters remain preoccupied within the household work only. So, I can say that it is one of the shortcomings of this novel that it does not show an authentic picture of the Indian family life, and it does not show the authentic picture of the woman in a traditional upper class Hindu South Indian family, right. Now, let us go on to the next theme, and this is the theme of humor and comedy in Swami and Friends. So, humor plays a very important role in this novel, and providing insights into the characters and their relationships. So, here are some key aspects of the humor in the novel. The very first one is the interaction between Swami and his friends, which often it leads to humorous situations. For instance, when Swami is caught between the two friends Rajam and Mani who are in conflict, he becomes their mediator. So, the absurdity of Swami's role in their battles, where he relays messages back and forth, it creates a very comic situation that highlights the trivial nature the trivial nature of childhood disputes. Right. So, Narayan's ability to turn everyday events into entertaining episodes, it adds lightness to the story. Right. So, the situations that Swami and his friends get into, such as the disastrous cricket matches, the fights, the school misadventures, all of these are rife with comic potential, isn't it? So, humor I would say plays a very important role in Swami and Friends, right? So, the next theme is a theme of humor. So, I was talking about humor. So, humor through childhood innocence, that is also an important element. So, the humor in Swami and Friends reflects the innocence of childhood. Swami's misunderstandings about adult concerns, like for example the politics or the school rules, his misunderstandings are portrayed very humorously, allowing the readers to see the world through a child's lens, through a child's eyes. For example, Swami's whimsical thoughts about mangoes while trying to solve the math problems. If you remember, when his father was making him solve fractions and giving him examples of mangoes, it's a very funny episode, even though Swami is humiliated by his father, but at the end it's a very light-hearted episode, it's a very comic episode. It illustrates the gap between childlike imagination and adult expectation, isn't it? So much of the humor comes from Swami's exaggerated responses to situations. He often acts very very melodramatically, or he's often over dramatic in his reactions, which can seem trivial to adults, but it's very important, it's very significant, it's monumental in a child's eyes. For example, another episode when Swami is caught up in school mischief or small lies, he feels as though the entire world is about to fall apart. So his fears and fantasies are both exaggerated, they are both relatable, making them very, very amusing to the readers, isn't it? So humor plays a very important role in the novel. Now similarly, another episode is his sudden desire to get a hoop, a cartwheel for himself. So all of a sudden, one day, Swaminathan wakes up and he wants to get a tire, he wants to get a hoop, a cartwheel, a wheel. Out of nowhere, he simply, one of the main desires and consuming passions in his life becomes his desire to get a wheel for himself. It is very abrupt, and all of a sudden he wants to have a wheel to play with, and then he goes to find a wheel. Then the cartman tells him that you need to bring money, and the entire episode where he prays to the god, and then he cannot find money, God has not given him any money, he gets very upset on the god, but then he realizes that you cannot abuse God. So all of these elements show humor in the novel, right? So since we are talking about humor, Swami and his friends, they constantly engage in mischievous activities, from skipping school to plotting against their teachers. So each and every element has humor in it, has a childlike humor and innocence, right? So these escapades, all his adventures, they often end up in humorous misunderstandings, sometimes even disasters, where their plans fail or backfire, leading to comic results. One more example, if I can tell you one more example, the boys' failed attempt, if you remember, at forming a cricket team, chapter number 13. So they all attempt, they go all guns blazing in, all of their energies are focused on forming a team for themselves, but they are not able to form a team. But at the same time, chapter 13, which is titled MCC, that is Malgudi Cricket Club, their failed attempts at forming a cricket team results in humorous chaos, as they bicker over rules and they want to play a full-fledged cricket on a sports ground having stumps, but they are not able to do anything. However, they are later content on enjoying a game of cricket in their backyards. So even if some of their situations leads to problematic situations, still at the end everything ends happily, right? So overall, humor in Swami and Friends serves not only to entertain but also to provide insights into the characters' lives and the societal context that they inhabit. Humor plays a significant role in K Narayan, Swami and Friends. Humor adds a certain charm and relatability to the narrative. So the humor in the novel is subtle, often derived from the innocence, the stupidities, I would say, the foolishness, the innocence and the naivety of childhood, the quirks of small town life of Malgudi, and the irony of everyday situations. So this is where humor lies. So overall, the humor in Swami and Friends, it's very gentle, it's affectionate and rooted in the innocence of childhood. So Narayan also uses humor to create an endearing portrait of Swami's world while commenting on the quirks of life in colonial India. So the secondary characters like Swami's strict father, his overly dramatic friends, and his intimidating school teachers, they all have their quirks, they all have their characters, and the way that these characters interact with Swami leads to humorous situations, right? So their exaggerated mannerisms, the behaviors, they become a source of comedy in Swami's interactions with them. For example, Swami's father's strictness, particularly when it comes to homework or discipline, creates a humorous tension in their interactions, right? Where Swami constantly tries to avoid confrontation. Swami constantly tries to avoid studying, right? So this is how humor plays a very important role in this particular novel. So at this point, I will end this lecture. In the subsequent part, that is part number 4 of this lecture, in the next part, I will discuss the various other themes. For example, I will be discussing the critique of the education system. It's a very important theme in R. K. Narayan, Swami and Friends, education system, and how Narayan offers a critique of the education system. And the second very important theme will be childhood and innocence in this particular novel. So I will see you all in the next part. Please stay tuned for the next part. Thank you so much.